Is that fine with you? I hope you are fine. Okay. So today I would like to go for a new topic. That is the topic of. It's a very important topic for all of you. And in fact, when we talk about environment, so mostly we talk about this issue only because many people know about at least this issue of pollution. So in case of pollution, a lot of technological kind of refinement or technological solutions have been tried. And also at the same time, there are a lot of policy framework or policy instruments which are being tried to reduce the impact of pollution. But one thing is for sure. So since with growth of population and urbanization, economic activities are expanding. So along with this growing growth in economic activities, the pollution will also be on the rise. So that is quite true. And in fact, there is a relationship between economic growth and environmental quality, or in essence, pollution. It is believed that at the time of economic expansion, the environmental quality might be relatively good. But over a period of time, when more economic activities happen, more machines start working, more industrialization happen, the environmental quality gets degraded, and it continues for quite some time. But after a point of time, the degradation of environmental quality reaches its peak, and beyond that, it starts improving. So that happens because of a number of things. First of all, okay, so with increased pollution, so maybe the industries are a little bit concerned about having better technologies, which will result in lesser amount of pollution. And also at the same time, government also intervene in the process by way of better policy prescriptions or better, you can say, kind of regulation of environmental degradation. So all these things combined together can result in relatively better environmental quality. And so that's why the degradation of environmental quality or environment gets reduced. So this is known as inverted U hypothesis. It's like initially it is low, then it will increase, then it will come down again. So that's like a kind of inverted U hypothesis. And that is given by Simon Kuznets. Actually, Simon Kuznets had one uh, kind of curve, which is known as inverted U hypothesis. So that is regarding income growth and inequality. So the same thing can be talked about in case of environmental quality and economic growth. So that's why we find this environmental Kuznets curve or inverted U hypothesis regarding economic growth and environmental quality. So what happens is that since economic activities have to be carried out, so we cannot simply do away with pollution. The best we can do about pollution is to reduce the amount of pollution or reduce the toxicity of pollutants. We can do that with the help of policies. We can do that with the help of technological improvements. So this is where people like you have a very important role to play because you can contribute towards better environmental quality by way of technological improvements because you are technical graduates. You will be technical graduates, and at the same time, if some of you at later point of time join some administrative positions, or maybe you can be part of the politics also. So in those cases, you can be part of the policy formulation process. So wherein you can put in your opinion or maybe suggestions regarding the policies to be formulated, to be framed for improving the quality of the environment. So regarding the topic here that we'll be discussing, mostly we'll be trying to find out what pollution is all about and what are the ways pollution can be regulated or controlled and what are the kind of problems that we face insofar as economic regulation is or maybe environmental regulation is concerned. So those things we'll try to have a look at. And also we'll try to find out what are the instruments of environmental regulation. There are different forms of instruments which can be used by the government. And if it is left to the markets alone, probably the market forces will not be in a position to control pollution. So that is why there will be some kind of instruments which are used by the centralized agency, probably in the form of government, who will interfere or intervene in the operation of the market and they will try to improve the quality of the environment by way of certain environmental regulation. You know about that because nowadays, if there is any kind of big projects coming in, so these big projects are ultimately cleared only once uh, environmental clearance is given to these projects, be it a hydroelectric project, be it a kind of road expansion project, highway projects, and so many other projects are there where actually the assessment, environmental impact assessment has to be found out or maybe carried out, and environmental clearances to be given. In fact, in India, if you look at, there are quite a few projects, this type of infrastructure projects, which are pending because environmental clearance for some of the portions of these projects or maybe some of the activities of these projects are not given. So there are a few highway projects where things are stuck up because of non-clearance from the Ministry of Environment and Forest. So these are certain things where actually intervention can be made by the government to ensure some kind of improvement in the quality of environment. And of course, it's not only the quality, but many times we have to talk about quantity also, which gets affected because of the increased activities of the human race, increased economic activities of the human race. Okay, first of all, we'll try to find out what pollution is all about, and then we'll try to find out what are the different forms of regulation of pollution. So, pollution is normally considered to be the residual flows, which arise mostly out of the human behavior that enter environmental systems. And when you talk about human behavior, so there might be, I'm talking about these economic activities in a sense, and these economic activities might be in the form of production activities or maybe in the form of consumption activities. So that there might be other things also, but mostly economic activities if we talk about, these are the economic activities. So we produce goods and services as a producer in an industry. So these goods and services might contribute towards kind of environmental degradation when pollution is being generated out there in the production activity. Similarly, we talk about consumption activities. So where probably we ride on bicycle, ride on vehicles, drive our vehicles, ride on motorcycle. So those activities kind of we get satisfaction out of that by driving or by riding on these vehicles. So these activities might result in direct, kind of air pollution. So which results in degradation of the environmental quality or air quality. So that will affect in consumption as well as in production. So there might be kind of impact on the environment, which actually reduces overall human welfare. Now, another thing is that you see, we have already seen. Actually, we discussed about one example of market failure, where we talked about the paper industry, and in the paper industry, we found that in environmental goods and services, particularly in generation of pollution, we find that actually if it is left to the market forces, we are not sure whether the optimal amount of the production will be carried out. If the production is not optimal, then obviously the pollution generated with that process itself will also not be the optimal. We are more interested in knowing the efficient amount of pollution or optimal amount of pollution being generated. So for that, since the market forces fail, the market failure happens insofar as a generation of optimal amount of goods and services, then probably it is not best left to the market forces. Somebody has to intervene, and that is why this kind of government regulation in environmental generation of environmental or in essence pollution and other environmental bads. So that is required. So pollution is considered to be residual flows mostly, but all are not actually residual flows. Okay. So when we produce or when we convert certain inputs into outputs, all the inputs, all the mass of the inputs may not be converted into useful outputs. Some of the input is converted into unwanted or residual outputs as well. So these unwanted or residual outputs are considered to be the pollutions or pollutants. So in a sense, we can say that pollution is generated through materials, or maybe it can be discussed with the help of this materials balance model. In the case of materials balance model, we are saying that the kind of energy and matter Okay? Cannot be neither be created nor destroyed. So one form of kind of maybe energy can be converted, matter can be converted into energy. One form of energy can be converted into another form of energy, or theoretically energy can be converted into matter. So this is possible. So that means the totality of this matter energy combination that remains same. So in that case, if from some inputs some output is generated, the rest of the inputs which are not converted into useful outputs, so they can remain as pollutant, or they can remain in the environment as pollution or pollutant. So if we look at the economic activities and generation of pollution, probably you can look into this flow chart where we can find how pollution is generated and how pollution can actually result in kind of environmental damage or overall societal damage. So economic activity in the form of production and consumption can result in some kind of emission. So this emission flows into the environmental media. We talked about this in the first unit when you talked about the relationship between environment and economic activities, and we found that some absorption of this flow happens in the system. So that might be through biological process itself. So depending upon the different kind of what will you see, different gases or maybe water available in the system. So some of the kind of flows, emission flows, will be converted into harmless substances. But that doesn't happen every time. Okay, so there is a kind of assimilative capacity limit up to which that can be done. Beyond that, probably there will be certain items so which cannot be absorbed, or also there are certain kind of pollutants which cannot be absorbed by the system itself. So in that case, we'll be having this non-absorbed emission flows. Now, if some of the flows are absorbed by the system, so that may not result in kind of damage of the system or environmental damage, degradation. So it is the non-absorbed emission flows which might result in environmental damage. So that might result in accumulation of pollution stock. So that might also be a kind of flow pollution damage, or in a sense you can say. So that might also be available in flow form, which will also contribute towards environmental damage. So pollution stock, we talked about metals, many metals. We talked about man-made metals or maybe kind of naturally available metals. So all those things might be actually cannot be processed or absorbed. So they accumulate. So there will be accumulation of pollutant stock, and this some of this again probably might ultimately might be less harmful or maybe kind of harmless to some extent, but it may not always be the case. The other portions will actually result in some kind of damage into the system. So that is why what we will have ultimately we have two forms of kind of pollutants. One is the stock pollutant and the other one is the flow pollutant, and both these pollutants will result in some kind of damage. So ultimately we find the damage coming out of these emissions. But let me tell you, normally we try to relate this damage, environmental damage, with the emission, but actually that need not be. Emission will be related with the pollution actually, or maybe kind of which will ultimately result in the damage. So this is the pollution which is more important from the point of view of controlling pollution or ensuring a better environmental quality. So, but that is very difficult to do because there is a kind of, although there is a relationship between emission and pollution, but it's extremely difficult to establish that relationship and also accordingly decide on policies to regulate the pollution generation. So it is mostly the emission which is targeted or emission which is actually tried to be controlled by the authorities for ensuring better societal welfare. Now, pollution flows may not exist as material wastes from economic activities only. All the time, it's not that always we are talking about pollution as residual elements. It might be direct result of certain activities as well. For example, there are two examples given out here. One is when there is an open air orchestra. So for example, in the case of your, so you can think about your Al Seringa program. when it's an open air orchestra, so noise might be created, which might result in sound pollution as well. Okay, so that is a direct result of the orchestra. It's not that it is a kind of residual thing. So in a sense, okay, so this pollution can happen directly also. This might be a direct product. Similarly, we talk about light pollution from urban lighting. So that's not a very new thing, of course, but the fact is that light pollution also happens. So as a result of which, you cannot see a clear sky in many urban settings. So you see, the nights are quite different from the urban center and in the villages. In the villages, you will see so many other things. The sky seems to be a little bit clear, stars are visible. But even in IIT campus or maybe in the urban centers, big cities, will not be able to see the sky clearly because of lot of lighting out there. So this is actually light pollution. But this light pollution happens directly. It's not a kind of residual things that is happening. The light generated light is kind of switched on, so that creates this light pollution. So as a course in economics, basically this course will focus mostly on the impact of production and consumption processes upon welfare. Basically, what happens what happens to the environmental quality or maybe environmental quantum. So as a result of economic activities in the form of production and consumption in the environmental system. So that is more of a concern for all of us, and that is mostly the things that environmental economics try to look into. So pollution as a whole can be defined as the net flows, which can be considered to be exceeding the absorptive capacity of the environment and which have damaging effects on human welfare or upon the ecological system in general. So of course, there are many definitions which you can resort to. So that is one way of defining what pollution is all about. So I have just mentioned actually pollution might have an impact not only on the quality of environment but also on quantity. So when you talk about quantity, we talk about environmental resources. So many things might be there, land, timber growth. So those things might be there. So because if there is a kind of pollution, maybe in the form of soil pollution or water pollution, so that will have direct impact on the growth of many biotic things, plant growth, maybe kind of timber growth. So those things will be important out there. And these things might be adversely affected. Even the crop growth is adversely affected because of pollution happening in the soil, as well as, for example, soil salinity. Soil salinity might not result in greater production, agricultural production. Similarly, some of the economic activities, for example, extraction of groundwater from the groundwater reserves, so that will also be kind of related with agricultural crop output. If suppose as a result of higher extraction of water, like water table goes down, obviously that will have an indirect impact in the agricultural growth. Similarly, people talk about size of marine population. If seawater is affected or maybe kind of polluted, so that will have an impact on the marine population. The growth might be adversely affected. The conducive environment may not be there. And in fact, we have already seen so many things out here. Now, with kind of new varieties of seeds available in agricultural sector, we have seen a kind of wiping out of the traditional varieties of seeds. It's not that it's automatically it happens. Actually, it was done in a systematic manner, in a sense, you can say so. Of course, that was required also. New variety of seeds were responsible for bringing in higher output. Traditional variety of seeds was not there. So that is one. But another thing is that you see which kind of chemical fertilizers and pesticides being used in the agricultural field. Some of the varieties might not be suitably cultivated on those crop field. So as a result of that, these have to be replaced by the kind of high-yielding varieties of seeds. That is one thing. Another thing is that cleaning capacity of the environment. Now, with more economic activities, more waste being generated, and these wastes are normally dumped into the environment. Now, once these wastes are dumped into the environment, so they will slowly lose the absorptive capacity or cleaning capacity of these wastes. So that way, in fact, So that is another impact, in essence, we can say, of pollution, so or maybe kind of waste, which might impact the quantum of kind of a lot of resources in the environment. This kind of cleaning capacity of the environment is also kind of resource for the mankind. So that will be affected negatively, adversely, and that is another impact of this type of pollution. So the mostly we talk about the quality of the resources which gets affected because of the pollution, and mostly we are concerned with this only. But at the same time, as we have pointed out, this quantum or quantity aspect of environmental resource, that is also equally very important. Now we know about all this noise pollution, kind of air pollution, soil pollution, water pollution, all those things which have direct impact with the health of the people out there. Water pollution, for example, we try to kind of try to get to clean water because of the fact that this water pollution will have direct impact with the health. Similarly, soil pollution, water pollution, again in agricultural field, will have its direct impact on agricultural growth. So, so those things are important. So those things directly affect the activities or maybe welfare of the society at large. So these are the examples: extent of biological diversity, if it gets affected, the health of animal or plant population gets affected, air quality gets affected because of pollution. Changes in the quality of environmental resources may have effects upon welfare even more profound than the changes in the quantity. Yes, because so when you talk about health damage, for example, due to air or water pollution, so that is a profound impact on the society at large, a profound impact on the welfare of the society at large. Quantity obviously is one important issue, but much more important issue is the quality of the environmental resources at large. So, which means the impact of that in the societal welfare is uh, humongous. So that's why people are more concerned with the kind of uh, quality effect of pollution as a whole in the society. Forms of pollution already we talked about. Actually, there are flow pollution, so there might be stock pollution. So these two things we often talk about. Uh, Insofar as this flow pollution is concerned, we talk about the damages result from the level of flow of residuals. That is the rate at which they are discharged into the environment. For example, noise flows. So it's not a kind of stock concept kind of a thing. It flows over a period. Of course, what happens, so towards the origin of the source, the noise will be a little bit higher. Over a like over spaces, the noise problem might get reduced. So that is there. But this might be considered to be a flow concept, flow pollution. The other one is the stock pollution, when damages are considered to be the functions of the stock of the residuals in the relevant environment at any point of time. There might be so many stock pollutants. We talk about the metals or man-made metals like PCBs, even DDTs, etc. might be there. And so these things actually result in the problem because many a time the production of these items happen at a higher rate at which the waste can be absorbed by the environment. Okay, emissions are produced at a higher rate than the absorptive capacity of the environment. So in that case, all the negative consequences of this absorption or maybe kind of dumping of this waste into the environment that are visible, which will have direct impact on the societal welfare at large. Also, sometimes it might be a combination of flow and stock both, and this can also result or maybe result in the kind of environmental or maybe societal welfare at large by having pollution. Sometimes we talk about this type of influence, horizontal zone of influence. So it might be local influence, it might be regional influence, sometimes it might be global pollution damage also. In case of local, for example, sound thing we can talk about. So locally there might be pollution. Light might be, local light pollution might be there. At the regional level, some of the gases, for example, sulfur, nitrogen oxide. So these things might have kind of bigger areas which are affected by these gases probably. And then we also can talk about this global pollution damage which might be created because of certain things in the atmosphere. Ozone, for example, if there is ozone depletion, there will be global damage. So pollution might create this type of damages for the entire globe as a whole. So sometimes we talk about atmospheric mix of pollutants. So which might be, it depends upon the degree of atmospheric mix of pollutants. There might be some kind of water pollution and kind of, so this is kind of surface pollutant kind of a thing. So where water is polluted. And so many of the things happen in the upper atmospheric levels, so which might be having its impact for the entire society at large, or maybe entire global community at large. For example, carbon dioxide, CFCs, all those things. The composition of all those things in the upper atmosphere, if it gets actually changed, so that will have a global impact on the society at large. So this global atmospheric degree of atmospheric mix of pollutants will have its impact as a whole. Sometimes we talk about this emission sources, the mobility of the emission sources. In some cases, what happens, the emission sources remain stationary. So in that case, the damage or pollution generated out of that, so that might reach a particular space only, not go beyond a particular space. For example, we talk about these power stations, the pollution generated out of those power stations, or pesticide use in agriculture. So this might be localized pollution, which might damage the local society, or we contribute towards reducing welfare of the society in the local level. But at the same time, we can also talk about some mobile source of pollution. So in those cases, what happens? The pollution gets transmitted from one place to another. So if there is a kind of vehicular traffic pollution, so the pollution will happen, not only pollution will not remain concentrated in one place. It will move from one place to another. So in a sense, it may result in a kind of regional or global pollution kind of a thing as well. So depending upon the kind of nature of the emission sources, we can find how will be the damage or impact of this pollution. So as we pointed out already, pollution will happen. We are more concerned with not, we are not concerned with actually reducing pollution level to zero. We cannot do that because economic activities have to happen. So that is why when you talk about development will have to happen. But at the same time, we need to see the minimum interference with the environmental quality or quantity. So that means the damages to the society should be the minimum. So that's why we talk about efficiency or efficient amount of pollution or optimal amount of pollution that should be generated in the society, so that the net benefits to the society will be the maximum. So we normally define this efficiency in terms of maximization of net output. In a sense, you can say net pollution also. So society's costs or damages of pollution and the social cost of controlling or abating pollution are to be considered. Because overall, what will happen if there is pollution, there will be damages to the society, welfare will be reduced. At the same time, so there will be some kind of cost involved in the process of controlling pollution or abating pollution. So both these things are to be considered while talking about kind of efficient amount of pollution generation. So whatever environmental damage we can find, so that might be considered to be cost, and this cost should be as low as possible. Okay. Whatever we produce or consume, so many of them are, as we pointed out, are associated with generation of residuals. So normally we try to maximize the output production. Obviously, generation of residuals will also be associated with that. That is positively correlated in a sense. So higher the amount of output that we are producing, higher the chance of higher amount of residuals will always be there. So an efficient output level would be the one that maximize the net output. Normally we talk about net output of pollution. So net benefit, basically we talk about net benefit of pollution, and that net benefit of pollution means benefit minus the cost, and this benefit will be in the form of output. So with which the pollution is associated, because we will be producing output, and this output, production of the output is also associated with generation of pollution. Now pollution will damage the system. So there can be a damage cost, and that damage cost can be considered to be the cost. So benefit minus that cost. will give us the net benefit of pollution, and we try to maximize this net benefit of pollution. The level of output at which that net benefit is maximized is the one which will decide on efficient amount of output as well as pollution. So the issue is, while talking about this efficient level of pollution, normally we believe that the market forces will generate this efficient level of pollution, but actually the market fails to do so because of so many issues. In case of environmental goods and resources, we have already seen why markets fail. There are issues of public goods, there are issues of externalities, there are issues of non-convexity, there are issues in terms of asymmetry in information. So these are some of the bigger issues. So which actually uh, result in market failure. And if the market fails, then obviously markets cannot be relied on to generate efficient amount of pollution or efficient amount of output, insofar as these environmental goods are concerned. So that is why kind of intervention from the government or maybe centralized agency is required. So that is how this environmental regulation or maybe the regulation of or controlling of pollution happens. And in this chapter, we should also talk about the procedures or the ways of controlling pollution or regulating pollution. But we should keep in mind the fact that while talking about controlling of pollution, there are a number of issues actually. Pollution control or environmental control is a subset of overall economic regulation. So insofar as regulation is concerned, there are a number of objectives why regulation should happen and what are the different ways of regulation. Now, regulation insofar as the system is concerned, economic activities are concerned. So we find that this should be done because the market systems fail to provide or maybe produce or generate the optimum amount of the output. So in that case, the centralized agency, maybe in the form of government, has to come forward and take care of or maybe kind of impose certain restrictions or regulation in the functioning of the markets. That is what is expected in the case of environmental pollution also. But the fact is that so it's not a straightforward case. So directly interfering with the system by raising some of the, or maybe by actually stipulating some of the activities, or maybe some of the kind of regulating activities, so that may not be done straightforward because of a lot of issues out there. So that is why what is important here is to know, so what are the complications in the overall regulation system or overall, it might be environmental regulation, but at the same time, it is a subset of economic regulation. So initially we'll try to see how economic regulation works and what are the objectives of economic regulation, and then we can actually replicate it for environmental regulation. It's the similar system, similar process, similar style of functioning here as well. So let's see the basic regulation, or maybe how pollution can be regulated with the help of different instruments out there. Now, mostly when you talk about economic regulation, so we find two theories of regulation. One is the public interest theory, and the other one is the interest group theory. Now, in the case of public interest theory, so public interest theory of regulation views the purpose of regulation as the promotion of the public interest. So there are a number of reasons actually. So why, so how public interest theory looks at regulation or economic regulation. But compared to, as against this principle or maybe this concept of public interest theory, interest group theory is concerned with the welfare of a small group of people out there. Public interest theory is basically for promoting welfare of the society at large or the general public at large. But in the case of interest group theory, the main purpose of regulation should be the promotion of narrow interest of particular groups in the society. For example, some individuals, some industries. Okay, for example, plastic industry. They want that okay, regulation should be there, and out of that, probably they will get some benefit if the government actually comes forward with restrictive kind of restricting the production of plastic and giving some kind of coming out with some kind of policy framework which favors certain groups of individuals or maybe groups of industries, probably that type of a thing can be considered to be serving the purpose of a particular group. So in that case, the regulation can be associated with that, might be considered to be promoting interest group theory. So in a sense, public interest theory is an ideal theory which can be considered to be a normative theory. Normative theory basically explains what should happen in an ideal world. But so it's a kind of prescriptive kind of thing. That should happen, this should happen, this should be done, that should be done. Normally in ordinary parlances, we talk about all those things. The government should do this. Government shouldn't do this. Government should implement the farm laws. Government shouldn't implement the farm laws. So there are a lot of prescriptions. So when you talk about this public interest theory, basically it's normative in nature. In essence, it says what should be done, or what should happen in an ideal world. But in the case of interest group theory, so that shows how things happen. Because so whether it is in the pressure of certain groups of people, and you know how the government functions in many countries in the world, in developing countries particularly, there will be certain strong groups who will lobby, who will have strong actually presence in the government, and accordingly governments might take decisions. Certain group of businessmen, big landlords, industrialists. So these are the people who actually control the government. They'll provide you the fund at the time of election, and at the same time they will also want that the policies are framed in such a way that these groups of people are benefited out of this. So that way, in fact, what we can say is that interest group theory, which promotes kind of welfare of a particular group, is akin to what we talk about as positive theory. Positive theory basically seeks to explain so what happens in and around, or in a sense why it happens, or why things happen, something like that. Actually, how it is functioning, how it is happening. So those things are the kind of domain of we see positive theory. And in fact, in the interest group theory, we find that only. So how things happen. Okay, so why certain things happen, why certain policies are taken by the government. So that might be because of the pressure from certain groups of people out there. So under the public interest theory, so people talk about the three general reasons for government regulation. So what are those three general reasons? One is the imperfect competition, one is the imperfect information, and the third one is the externalities. Okay, insofar as imperfect competition is concerned, we talked about market structure. In fact, we mentioned that okay, so there are basically two categories of markets. One is the competitive markets, and the other one is the imperfectly competitive markets. In the case of perfect competitive market, we find this perfectly competitive market as one extreme case. So where actually what happens, the individual farms will not have the control over the prices. So they will sell the product at the price which is decided by the market forces. They do not have the capacity to kind of decide on the price. But as against this, we also talked about this monopoly market structure. So where the monopolist has the capacity to decide on how much commodity is to be sold in the market and how much price is to be charged. And the monopolist will have that liberty of fixing the price so as to extract or maybe take away the consumer surplus, because they can fix a relatively higher price. So normally it is believed that natural monopoly is the traditional normative justification for government regulation. So you see, so when you talk about imperfect competition, for example, monopoly, so there are many reasons why monopolies should emerge. One of the reasons why monopolies should emerge is the size of the market. If it so happens that the size of the market doesn't allow many farms to operate, then obviously there will be monopoly market structure which will be prevailing in the society or maybe in the economy. So the government probably has to decide or intervene, and government has to mandate that there will be only one farm, in the economy to operate those things. In some cases, in India, we find that uh, till few years back, even today, actually, if we talk about the railway network, is mostly the monopoly activities of the Indian Railways. Of course, nowadays the private parties are allowed to some extent, but the growth of private sector is not that large. So, in a sense, we can say that the market for railway services, that is mostly monopoly in nature, and that is basically because of the intervention of the government. Government actually intervenes, government regulates the railway service, and that's why the monopoly market structure is noticed in case of railway services. Similarly, in the case of certain economic utilities like electricity supply system, in most of the cases you will find, so that is under the hand of the government. Government will be having certain bodies. For example, you see in all the states you will be finding this state electricity boards. Nowadays things are a little bit different. Okay, kind of power distribution corporation limited kind of thing. So these things are also under the control of certain kind of agencies. One agency will be responsible for that. You do not have multiple agencies doing these type of things. So that is basically because of the fact that the utilities which will be generated out there, so that should be made available to all the people. There should not be enough of mentioned fact enough of players out there because it's a utility service which is to be provided, and mostly the government does it with the help of its own agencies. Okay, so that is one reason, which is why it is believed that there should be some kind of intervention. Because otherwise, if it is left to the market forces, there might be many players, okay, into the market, and as a result of that, probably the markets will not be functioning properly. So the role of the government will be to guarantee a monopoly to a particular firm. So by restricting entry of new firms, and at the same time, its responsibility also will be to control prices in order to protect consumers from monopoly pricing. Of course, in some cases, what happens? Okay, the government directly intervenes in the market out here because some of the firms which might be responsible, it may not be exactly monopoly, it might be kind of a oligopoly kind of a thing also. So in which case the firms which are providing the services, so they might be having kind of collusion in between themselves. So that means there will be understanding between the firms which are providing the services, and they will decide how much product they will be producing and how much a price they will be charging. Now, although it is believed that more than one firm will result in some kind of competition amongst the players out there, but basically that is not the case. Many a time it might so happen that so it might go for kind of merger or acquisition. So in that case, out of suppose 5 players, after a point of time, after merger acquisition happens, you might find only 2 or 1 player providing the services. So the government's role here will be to ensure that the excessive power, concentration of power doesn't uh, is not vested in these firms so as to exploit the consumers too much. So that we in fact some kind of controlling or regulation of the activities of the firms is to be ensured, and that can be done by the government out there. Second rationale for government regulation comes from this imperfect information. Now, in the case of information, all of us know if a market has to function properly, information flow should be flawless or maybe costless. So people should have, all the parties involved in the process should have the same information without much cost involved in the process. But the fact is that acquiring information is very costly. So as a result, when the consumers are about to enter into a transaction, they may not always have complete information on certain things. For example, product quality. So many a time it happens there is asymmetry of information. The producers know more about the quality than the consumers. Or sellers know more about the product they are transacting compared to the buyers. So these are some of the issues. Apart from that, because of the cost of acquiring information, it may not even be desirable for the consumers to acquire the complete information because the cost of getting the information itself might be very high. So the benefits that they will be having by having the product might be less compared to the cost that they have to incur for getting the information. So that is why the government has to come forward and they have to step in to compensate for incomplete information. So the government might say that it's the responsibility of the provider regarding the information. For example, if it is a food market, so the producers have to have the responsibility. Producers will be held liable if something goes wrong, something like that. So we can say that the government might establish a set of liability rules to encourage the provision of safety-related quality. So that means once the product is consumed, so if something goes wrong, it is the responsibility of the farms which is actually producing the product. So if these type of liability rules are set by the government, probably the farms will be responsible for becoming more, means providing more safe products or safe food items. Okay. Similarly, at some point of time, what happens? The government can also tell the producers that you need to provide the basic information regarding the product that is being produced. For example, if you purchase a food product, packed item, the government might say that the items are produced, the inputs or maybe ingredients that are used for producing the product, that should be clearly mentioned in the label. So for that, certain agencies are involved, so who will look into that and they will certify. But if that is done, then what happens? That is the kind of intervention, this is the kind of regulation we can say so. So that will ensure that some kind of information asymmetry is there, and that by looking into the information, the people can or consumers can decide whether the product is to be procured or not. If somebody is a vegetarian, so he might look into the ingredients, and if he finds that some non-veg ingredients are there, he may prefer not to purchase that product. So by simply looking into the labels or maybe the kind of information provided in the label or maybe in the package of the product, the people can decide on that. So this improves the welfare of the society at large. So that way, in fact, we have some kind of interventions by the government in the face of incomplete information or also a kind of imperfect market structure. And the third one is regarding in the case of externalities, basically in the area of provision of public goods and public bads. So mostly our concern will be public bad and the externalities. So we know these things very well. Whenever there is some kind of public needs, the markets fail. Actually, markets cannot provide us the optimal amount of goods and services. It cannot decide. It cannot actually provide the correct information. So the government, private markets are inefficient in these cases. So government interventions have to be there, and government intervenes to try to correct the problem. The government might step in to directly provide these goods or bads at efficient level, effectively eliminating the private market. So that might be one responsibility of the government. Okay. So, but in the case of public bads, basically public bads means pollution actually. So we are saying public bads because in case of pollution also there is kind of publicness. If pollution takes place, nobody can. It's non-rival in conjunction. It's non-exclusive in nature in a sense. If something happens, something bad happens, and some publicness is there. Mostly in the case of pollution, that is the case. Okay, so if air pollution takes place in a place, then obviously everybody will be affected because of that. If water pollution takes place in a particular locality, the people in the locality will be affected because of that. So in essence, that there is publicness out there. So in the case of this type of public bads, the usual approach for the government is to define a set of institutions and regulation to govern provision of these public bads. For example, government might establish a set of regulations to restrict the production of pollution. So these things might be done by the government. So these are the reasons why actually we have this type of kind of government regulation insofar as economic activities as well as the activities which will result in environmental pollution. In the case of interest group theory, So they maintain that the primary rationale for regulation is rent seeking. Now, what is rent seeking? That is again interesting. We already discussed this issue, in fact. Rent seeking involves private individuals or firms using the government to guarantee extra profits, which is also known as the rent, through government mandated restrictions. Okay. So government, the farms or individuals use the government to guarantee extra profits through government mandated restrictions on economic activity. For example, so certain things, if the government believes that okay, certain commodities are to be produced by certain farms having a kind of what will you say, turnover above certain amount or value, then it happens that so certain companies will be preferred by the government. It might happen, and the big companies, big industrialists, will have its role in policy formulation also, because indirectly they can influence the decision of the government, and government might think of having these policies as well. Now, if such policies are taken, so these policies will affect or maybe kind of provide incentives to certain groups of industrialists as well. Now, in that case, we can say that it's a kind of rent-seeking principle, which is resorted to, and rent-seeking is the primary rationale for this type of regulation. You can think about this one, no? Kind of what will you say? For mobile, 4G data, 3G data, those things actually. So if you have certain policies by which certain group of industries can participate and certain groups are not able to participate, basically that means you are trying to go for a kind of interest group theory of regulation, whereby the government is giving some kind of incentives to certain categories of industries or maybe certain group of industries only. So these are how or why regulations should be there. And this regulation includes both economic regulation as well as environmental regulation. But although this regulation seems to be straightforward, this regulation is not very easy to carry out because there are a lot of complications in the entire system. So we'll try to see a basic framework of regulation. In a sense, you can say political economy model of regulation, and that will be taken up tomorrow. And these things mostly I am doing from the book by Kolstad. He has a book on environmental economics. So that book I'm trying to consult for this class, and I'll try to provide you some handout on this or maybe kind of some material on this. Okay, chapter 8 in my case, regulating pollution. That chapter will be important for you. So I'll try to provide you the PDF copies of these things in a mail to you. Okay, if you have any question, I can pick up.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Sir, I have two doubts. Sir, first, in the forms of pollution slide, sir, there was this talk pollutants. So in that, it was written that environment has a certain capacity, absorptive capacity for lead. But we have already studied that lead is a conservative pollutant, so it should not have any like absorptive capacity for lead.
Okay, that is also yeah. Yeah, lead is lead, then DDT, PCBs, yeah, conservative pollutants. Of course, yes, that may not be exactly correct. I agree with you. So probably this will remain a stock only, right? That you are saying. So yes, probably that might happen. So, but otherwise, what do you feel? You'll be knowing it better. This is the slide you talked about, right?
Yes, sir. Sir, it is written emissions are produced at a higher
Emissions are
rate than
produced at a rate higher than the absorptive capacity. For example, in case of lead, PCBs, DDT, etc. Yes, absorptive capacity. Normally, what happens? Yes, they cannot convert it into harmless substances. Yeah, that is true. But the thing is that you see, even if it is metallic product, no. So unless the absorptive capacity is uh, exceeded, then the kind of what will you say, this negative impact of these things may not be so much visible. But once the absorptive capacity is exceeded, then it will result in kind of pollution that we often encounter with. So that is the issue out here. But yes, I understand. So it cannot process it because these are kind of conservative pollutants, and this cumulative and conservative pollutants cannot be processed and converted into harmless substances. But here we are talking about absorption capacity, absorb. So basically, harmful impact or maybe harms are not visible out there, harms are not experienced out there. That might happen to some extent. But the fact is that, yes, you are very much correct. You mean to say that processing of these will not happen. That is true. That is the process because metals ultimately these will remain like that only, right? Only thing is that if the quantum is higher compared to the absorptive capacity of the environment, in that case, all these negative consequences will be visible, and that will have direct consequences to the human welfare at large. So that is what is more concerned. Sometimes some pollution is always there, but ultimately, if it is not directly, means in fact reducing the societal welfare by way of damage and other things, so then probably we are not very much concerned with that. But if it is directly associated with reduction of societal welfare by way of damage, environmental damage or something like that, then that is a serious concern for the society at large, and we try to control pollution so as not to have this type of damaging kind of effect of this pollution generation or maybe kind of dumping of waste into the environment. So you are very much correct, but at the same time, the meaning is a little bit different. That what we understand. We are not talking about the processing part. Mostly, we are talking about kind of exceeding the absorptive capacity of the environment at large. Yeah, you are correct.
Okay. Yes, sir. Sir, I had one more doubt, sir. In
Yeah.
the example that you gave for information asymmetry, in that you said that firms should be held responsible if something goes wrong with the health of people. Sir, wouldn't this lead to increase of the product price because firms will have to keep extra funds for like ensuring that their product does not harm people, like side effects kind of thing?
No, well, yes. Normally, what happens? The price, if you look into price is decided based on so many things. And now, cost of production and price, there is a huge gap actually, if you look into. So that's why in the market, if you go, MRP is written, but if you go to some shops, you will get the product at much lesser price than the MRP. Why is it so? You see, most of the products are produced outside the sun, right? So we are mostly a consuming state. We do not produce that much. But even then, if you go to our employees cooperative, I'm just giving you an example. Don't take it otherwise. Okay. So some of the products are available at less than the MRP. So in a sense, the MRP which is fixed, so that is definitely based on cost of production. But at the same time, there will be certain other things also. Transportation cost will be there, advertising cost will be there. So many things are there. Now, this safety precaution that we are talking about, no, actually what happens? Normally, the products should be such that people do not fall sick, right? So you need to have those ingredients which are actually suitable for consumption or use by the people out there. Now, here the industries or maybe the company's responsibility is to ensure that certain these ingredients are being used in producing the product. Okay. So now, if they
Yeah.
use that, there is no problem. So that is why this type of hands-off kind of what will you say? It's not a kind of very restrictive policy in terms of regulation, but basically a way of saying that. So you do whatever you do, but the fact is that you should ensure that people do not fall sick by consuming your product. And if something goes wrong, you will be held responsible. So that will actually ensure that the farms will be a little bit cautious. They will not try to go for a kind of mixing of the ingredients, and they will try to control their product in such a way that it will not adversely affect the human welfare at large. That is the thing. It's a kind of safety kind of a thing, no? So, so otherwise, what will happen? So there is no control. There is no regulation at all. Then if they find that there is no control, there is no regulation, anything and everything can be done out there. That's the problem. That's the problem. So that's why some kind of regulation or control is required out there. So that is just an example to tell you. Yes, cost might go up a little bit if they take kind of the proper uh, kind of safety measures into account. But that will not be very high. Let me tell you, that will not be very high. Okay, it's a kind of precaution they have to take. Obviously, they have to take that precaution. That will not be very high. You see, already the margin is there. So the cost of production and the price will always have a gap. Actually, margin is always there. The share of for the entrepreneur is already included out there. So that is there. That can take care of. A little bit of cost will be there. Not very high.
Okay. Sir, I was thinking that if government could intervene and ensure the quality instead of placing the blame on the firm, like quality checking can be more stringent. So that wouldn't that be a better solution?
Oh, no, no. What I meant to say is that which one is better and which one is worse, that I didn't mention. So I was talking about the different types of intervention. Yes, another thing is that you see this labeling. We talked about packed item. For example, biscuit, the packet of biscuit you purchase, no. So there, everything is mentioned out there, no, and that
Yes.
is certified by Food Security and Safety in India, right? FSSAI. So what does that mean? That means if the certification is coming from that authority, the government is looking into that, right? The
Yes.
government organization is looking into that. You see, so who is government? See, in essence, in IIT system, if you talk about administrator or authority, who is the authority? In case of hostel, your wardens are also part of authority, right? Similarly, these organizations which are entrusted with these responsibilities, these are also part of the government only, right? So if
Yes.
these authorities ensure that yes, this is followed, this certification has been done, that basically means these are the ingredients that are being used by the farm in producing this particular product. Of course, I very much agree with you. For many things, so this type of labeling may not be there. So for that, the system is there. Only thing is that the way we implement the process. So that is the problem. Yes, this inspection thing that you are talking about or monitoring. So that is always part of this type of activities. But somehow, so maybe a lot of problems are there in the process. We do not carry out the activities properly, which is why at some point of time we hear a lot of issues. We come across a lot of issues, particularly about the food products I'm talking about. Okay, during Diwali or just before Diwali or Durga Puja, will we find being lot of raids by these monitoring agencies. Okay, so that happens, but that should be a regular activity, and that will also be published in newspapers. That will be published in media. Okay, so so that is not what so they are supposed to do. They should do it. This is a kind of normal duty, just like we are taking your classes. So we do not advertise in the newspaper that we are taking classes. We do not invite the media to see that we are taking classes. It's not like that, no. So these are our responsibilities. Every day we have to do this, and this is our. So that way, in fact, they should do, but they do not do that actually. The implementation part is a little bit difficult. Difficult means I mean to say that somehow we are not very honest. Probably because of that, it happens sometimes. Yes, I agree with you that monitoring is a very important component of this regulation. Otherwise, okay, so washing of hands by the government is not good. But I very much agree with you. That's true.
Okay. Yes.
Okay. Uh,
Yes.
Anything else? Any other question from anybody? If not, let me stop here. Tomorrow we are meeting again. We'll talk about the basic regulatory framework and other issues related with the policy.